it's unknown who exactly is controlling all the hostages at the moment. Many groups inside Gaza, not just Hamas. But I think there is now huge pressure within Israel as well for this, saying, get the hostages out. We lose something of our soul. People said to me, I was there a few weeks ago, we lose something of our soul if we don't really try to bring our people home.
Keir Starmer meeting with leaders from NATO's largest countries in Berlin today. The Prime Minister is going to be greeted in Berlin by Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor, at around midday for a meeting of the so-called Quad of Western leaders alongside the US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. And of course, there's only one thing they're going to be discussing, and that is the conflict in the Middle East following the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Jane, there's loads in the paper about this today, as you'd expect, some great reporting from George Grills from Israel, and a very, very comprehensive obituary too. But it's quite the account George Grills has written about how the man Israel had been pursuing for the past year ended up being found in a house by himself, throwing sticks at a drone.
It's an extraordinary account. I mean, it's worth reading every single word of it. It's just extraordinary. It was more by luck than by design that they really did find him in the end there. And I love the fact that he was only properly identified by his yellowing teeth. I look forward to this being made into a film by Michael Bay imminently, because it's that kind of a story and an account of capturing him. But on a serious note, I mean, it does sound from the analysis of this like it could really be a turning point in the conflict in terms of the fact that Sinwar was personally blocking all of the attempts at agreements, and with him out of the way, Hamas is obviously significantly weakened, but it also hopefully does open up possibilities for moving forward, which obviously will be top of the agenda today in Berlin.
Well, let's bring in Bronwen Maddox, Director and CEO of the think tank Chatham House. Good morning, Bronwen.
Good morning.
So is it too optimistic to say this will lead to a de-escalation, or could lay the ground for de-escalation? Because I suppose it requires the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, to maybe bank the win and move on, rather than trying to wipe out Hamas's operational capabilities entirely.
Yes, it does. I think could is probably safer than will. But even Netanyahu, who has said various things since the killing was confirmed about having to wipe out the rest of Hamas, even he has said this is the beginning of the end. I think there is going to be huge pressure on Israel now to go to a ceasefire, including pressure from the US. Joe Biden, as you said, is meeting other leaders, including Keir Starmer, today in Berlin. And that is one of the top things they're going to be talking about, because the world wants a ceasefire.
Yes, indeed it does. Netanyahu says Israel has settled the score with Sinwar over the Hamas attacks, which has resulted in around 1,200 Israeli killed, of course, 250 taken hostage. And Netanyahu said, while this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it is the beginning of the end. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns the hostages. Now, just on the hostages, Bronwen, how likely is that now? Well, is there a possibility we see reprisals from Hamas, responding in kind, killing hostages, not releasing hostages? Or is it all a bit unclear at this stage?
It's certainly a bit unclear. And there would have to be, I think, some kind of resurrection of the talks that just started to an end a few weeks ago. Just a few weeks ago, they failed because each side had added new conditions. On Hamas's side, more conditions about release of more Palestinian prisoners. On Israel's side, for control over a further bit of the Gaza Strip along the Egyptian border, the so-called Delphi corridor. So I think the easiest way to get the hostages out will be resurrecting those talks, and that is not going to be easy because it's not clear who speaks for Hamas at this.
Yeah, yes, indeed, and the problem, I suppose, for the Israelis is, having killed the leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas now, both its political leadership and its military leadership in Hamas's case. Who is doing the negotiation with them? What does that mean? What are Hamas and Hezbollah now, given Israel has quite successfully decapitated their leaders? Who are they negotiating with? What steps do they take now? These are questions that remain unsettled, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, Sinwar was driving these negotiations, albeit from within Gaza, but there are still some leaders of Hamas who have house room in Qatar and other places. I think they probably can muster some kind of counterparty to be able to talk about this. But of course, it's unknown who exactly is controlling all the hostages at the moment. Many groups inside Gaza, not just Hamas. But I think there is now huge pressure within Israel as well for this, saying, get the hostages out. We lose something of our soul. People said to me, I was there a few weeks ago, we lose something of our soul if we don't really try to bring our people home.
Obviously, it's not the only conflict the Quad of NATO leaders will be talking about today. Western support for Ukraine will also be on the agenda today. What can we expect? Because obviously, this is taking place against the backdrop of a potential change of presidency in the US and a potential change of direction on the balance of the Western alliance and its approach to Ukraine. So what are they likely to be talking about on that front?
They're going to be talking about how to reassure Ukraine. They will be talking about whether or not to give Ukraine permission to use missiles into Russian territory in the way that it's been asking for some time. They may be talking about Ukraine's desire to be part of NATO, something that Ukraine says is essential for its own security and Europe's security in the future, but NATO has been not completely warm about, and so on. But they've got to find a way to talk about how Ukraine can still win in some sense and how they can help it do that, because otherwise we're getting reports by the day of how Russia is getting access to more weapons, whether from North Korea or from Iran, or even, according to US intelligence, from China.
Well,
sorry.
No, sorry. Do go on, Bronwen.
No, that's all. There's a lot to talk about Ukraine, but the thrust from the Ukrainians is don't forget about us.
Indeed. And it's a difficult message to land in a week like this. Bronwen Maddox, Director and CEO at Chatham House, thanks very much for joining us.
1 year ago, Yahya Sinwar, the terrorist chief of Hamas, launched the October 7th massacre against Israel. It was the bloodiest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. It was the worst attack on the Jewish state since the founding of Israel. Sinwar's terrorists murdered in cold blood 1,200 people. That's elderly people, Holocaust survivors, children. They brutally raped women. They beheaded men. They burnt babies alive. And they took some 251 women, men, and children hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. Today, the mastermind of this day of sheer evil is no more. Yahya Sinwar is dead. He was killed in Rafah by the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages. Hamas is holding 101 hostages in Gaza, who are citizens of 23 countries, citizens of Israel, but citizens of many other countries. Israel is committed to doing everything in our power to bring all of them home. And Israel will guarantee the safety of all those who return our hostages. But to those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice. I also have a message of hope to the peoples of the region. The axis of terror that was built by Iran is collapsing before our eyes. Nasrallah is gone. His deputy Muhsin is gone. Haniyeh is gone. Def is gone. Sinwar is gone. The reign of terror that the Iranian regime has imposed on its own people and on the peoples of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, this too will come to an end. All those who seek a future of prosperity and peace in the Middle East should unite to build a better future. Together, we can push back the forces of darkness and create a future of light and hope for all of us.